Okay? Today, we would like to talk about the sustainability in the mind of Arab and also the serialization with Shinkenchiku. So we invited our guests from Arab to talk about it. First of all, I am facilitating this meeting. I'm Shikata from Shinkenchiku. And today we have Mr. Susumu Matsunobu from Arab. Nice to meet you. And Mr. Kentaro Suga from Arab. And also Masaki Tokubuchi-san. Thank you. First of all, for me, I would like to start talking about why we started with this serialization. And this year in 2023, once we enter into this year, we had the top of Oguri-san as the Tokyo office of Arab to talk about if we can do something with Shinkenchiku. And at that time, we didn't have a clear expectation on what kind of article is going to come. But we are seeing that so in the society, there is also a lot of voice regarding environmental issue. So we're talking about, for example, at least taking BI values as the numbers that we'll be looking at, and also what we can do to cope with environmental problems. That's what we've been talking about at Shinkenchiku. So about these things, and also anything we can do as fact check. And that's why we have started with this serialization. In fact, our header is also very important. It's about the possibilities of architecture and urbanism. So that's also what we added on with our discussion. We're talking about also the environment issues, or not just issues, but also it may lead to some new possibilities in architecture. And that's why we have this series. So altogether we have 10 articles in total, and every time we're going to talk about different topics. So based on this intention, we started with this serialization. So how did Arab take this? And first of all, what were the messages, and also why did you think you wanted to do this? Matsunobu-san, can you comment on this? Yes, sure. First of all, me, as Shikata-san just mentioned now, we started with talking just with Oguri-san, just the two of us to visit Shinkenchiku and talking about whether we can do a series like this. For us, we see Arab as a company in many senses. We are focused on environment or sustainability. We have to lead the world of architecture. Well, it's our own pride, but we think we hold this leadership role in the industry. So we were really keen on doing such a topic. And within the company, especially in our Tokyo office, we wanted to concert our efforts and to collaborate on the series. And that's why we started. Thank you. Suga-san, what did you think initially about this serialization? Right. Yeah, actually, we were talking about the company who is going to be in charge of this. And I did raise my hand, and also Tokuchi-san as well, the two of us. And at the same time, we also got some young writers that would be the core to write it up. So that was under this condition. So we had to understand what the young writers want to put together and work together in hands with our young generation and talk about how Arab is working with sustainability. So we had struggles, of course, while we were making this way through. And that was how we started. Okay, thank you. Tokubuchi-san, why did you raise your hand and decide to be involved? Right. For me, I've been a structural engineer by background. So, as you know, it's not a very active position for me to talk about sustainability. So far, there had not been such a chance. But by working at Arab, I had many opportunities working with people from outside Japan. And then I see they have a very high level of awareness with sustainability. So that's why we were talking about, for example, the embodied carbon and so on. That's how I started getting interested in sustainability. So with this opportunity, with the offer from Shinkenchiku and about our Arab Tokyo office to do this collaboration, and it looked like many people are going to get involved. That's why I just wanted to be a forerunner and raise my hand to be part of it. Okay, so just now, Suga-san was talking about working with young people who are going to be the main writers. So what was the intention behind composition of the young writers, and what did you have behind this? And from the company, my understanding was why the company wanted to have young people as the writer is because environment problems is really a global issue. And although in our generation we're trying very hard to build by ourselves the architectures, but in decades, 10 years later, 20 years later, it's going to impact the environment of the world later, and this is critical. So this young generation is going to experience that impact the most, and what they think about it now is very important. That's why we would like to understand better how these young people are thinking and to let Japan know. That was one thing. And the other thing was, when we talk to young people, we feel that they're really serious about environmental issues. Well, sometimes I tend to be cynical hearing what they say, but in that sense, I feel the young people, they're really seriously thinking about how to resolve environmental issues. That's why I think it's a great thing to have them at the center to be the writers. Right. And their reaction was we really wanted to write it out, and we got a good group of people, so they really have a good level of interest. And once we start to write it, we realize it's very difficult to get a well summarized point and concerted message, so there's a lot of struggles. So Matsunobu-san, how about your thoughts on the young writers? Right. Well, the actual writing is by these two people here, and they're nicely leading the young fellows. For me, I am looking at it from the side, from my perspective. And I feel that it's an excellent opportunity for these young people because, especially when we're talking about sustainability and environmental issues, is not something that you can achieve or actualize just by thinking something on your own. So it's important to reach out to the world, especially in the case of Arup. We're working together with our clients to design and build. So it is critical and it's a big piece to work together. And as a piece of convincing material, I think it was a brilliant chance for us to write this up together. Thank you. Right. If you tell us so, I'm very glad to hear about it. I feel like we can go a little further. Yeah? Right. Yes, I think indeed. Kata-san, yourself, and also our editors at Shinkenchiku, the first step is to convince yourselves, because otherwise we won't be able to convince our clients. Right. So every time when we're talking about this series, it feels like from day to day you have some frustrations when you're trying to design the buildings and architectures, but on the other hand there are also some bits that you feel that you wouldn't be resolving. So it's very interesting to see the different sides of it. This time you decided on some themes. I'm just wondering, how did you arrive at those themes and what were the thoughts around it? Right. So initially I was the one who raised my own hand and took the initiatives. So I tried to come up with like 10 topics with the 10 themes for the serialization. And after that, I gathered our writers to do 2 sessions of brainstormings and finally arrived at what we have now. Well, we're engineers, so usually we tend to start from what's closer to us. But if we just do that, it seems that we cannot have a bird's eye view on the broader issues with the environmental issues. So that's why we try to look at peripheral things as well, like direct management, building management team, and many specialized teams to bring their insights. Okay, Tokubuchi-san, how about you? Right, so this time, especially, I feel that the biggest struggle was with the thing that when we started, Arup has our own global network, which is one of our strengths. So I thought with a global leader, we can get them to talk about their sustainability. That's one resource we have from overseas. Initially, I thought that could be an idea, but later on, after talking about a bit for a while, I feel like rather than just bringing the overseas contacts right away to Japan, it wouldn't resonate that much with the Japanese audience. And on the other hand, we had these young people who would actually take up the role as a factual leader and to take the initiatives and think and write it up. would actually be closer to the Japan's thoughts. And that's how we can put it together as a nicer topic. So that's why we didn't push forward the entire strength of our global network, but we were trying to do this with our Tokyo team. And that was quite a big struggle, though. Well, indeed, we're collecting information globally all around, but to summarize the ideas is all up to us, Tokubuchi-san and myself. Right. So you were also, indeed, we had expectation on getting some information from your global network, and also environmental issue is obviously a global issue. We wouldn't arrive at the perfect solution just by thinking in Japan. So obviously there may be more things that we can reach out to and think about. So this time we started from the June issue of Shinkenchiku and in the latest issue in November. Now there's been 6 themes that we touch on. For example, the first time we were talking about the paradigm shift again around architecture. So there was a big impact due to architecture after Industrial Revolution. And there were a couple of topics that we brought up after that. And so far in the series that we've been looking about, was there a particular thing that you liked or you felt this interesting? Matsunobu-san, what do you feel? Right. Well, I think this series has already been on for half a year. Time flies. What's interesting is kind of hard to think of it now. I need to recall my memory, but, well, for me, myself, I feel it was really important to have the energy and make sure we use it wisely to reach carbon neutral, or we are really concerned about how to achieve those targets for zero emission. So I think from the energy part, that was something that I started with a good expectation on, and I'm glad that it came out as a nice article on that topic. Thank you. Right, Suga-san, what's your feeling? Well, I think it was interesting or very impressive. It was the first issue we had about the paradigm shift. That was exactly the theme that we picked up, and it set out beautifully the direction for our series. So I think that was good as the first one. And in one way or the other, it seems like it's a passive thing when we try to reserve or conserve the environment. But our young people are taking it very positively, trying to take constructive actions, and not just to look at how to resolve environmental issue, but also to be regenerative and to take a further step and do something new in architecture. We're seeing that it's really positive mindset that they're bringing in, and it was clear in the first article, so it was very impressive to me. Okay, I see. So for this series, I think ultimately we're not trying to just preach. We just want to make it clear, and I think it's interesting that we show what could be done, and not like just forcefully preaching what has to be done. I think from one perspective, it may be nice, and from the other side, it may have different perspectives. So that's also interesting. Tokubuchi-san, what did you feel about the different themes? Well, right, I think it was great that we didn't have any overlapping themes. Personally, I was extremely interested in WLCA, embodied carbon. This is about how we can contribute as structural engineer. When we think about that, it is extremely easy to understand, and it was really straightforward when you multiply the quantity with the cost. Very easy math, but when we try to be more sophisticated and think about what can be done, I think that is very nicely clicking in and like a catchy word that we can talk about. And we're trying to see what we can do, and I am happy to see our younger generation working together, thinking about sustainability and what we can do with action. So I think that's really interesting in my perspective. Then depending on how we're using different materials, sustainability, it may not essentially be achieved. It depends on how we use it. For example, even if we're using wood, I think that was really interesting. Yes, in a different sense, you had a lot of struggle too, right? Yes. I know nowadays so many things are happening all together at the same time. So it doesn't mean that we are getting one answer, single solution for everything. It's also important to look into different ways of thinking, streams of thinking. I think for the first few times, we had a very clear theme. So it was good, but when we continue on, apparently some of those borders would overlap, and we may feel at a point or the other we're kind of contradicting. But from one perspective or the other, I think if we try to take up more challenges, we may also end up seeing different pathways. So it's not just trying to preach and say, please do this. Because if we're looking at one thing from one perspective and in a different issue, we may look at it from the other reverse side and we may have other insights. So I think that's also the very interesting part. Right. So now let's talk about how you're making progress in this series. So I know you have different themes and you have the young generation writers writing it up. Are you discussing with them every time, and then how you start with writing the drafts and finishing that off? So Suga-san, what do you feel? What were the discussions on each theme and about the content? And maybe you feel that there's something that was totally different from how we started off? Yes, right. In fact, before we have discussion with you, Shikata-san, we discussed for around 2 rounds in the company to see what are the messages we want to convey, and what examples do we want to convey what message. We're working very hard to prepare for the articles, but there we're always trying to get new insights and we're always getting new perspectives, so we also have questions popping up and we may have to rethink about it from scratch. Maybe that was the first meeting. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying those meetings. Maybe I cannot say so, but yeah, right. I think it's good that we have discussion, and when we verbalize it, our thoughts, we feel maybe sometimes we thought we had a thought, but actually it's not well tidied up yet. And when we're getting questions, we understand what those points were. So I think that is a process like that, right? It's really interesting, but sometimes you're struggling about how to present some ideas. And then maybe you come up with a question about whether that's actually a good topic for the article or not. And then I think Tokubuchi-san was talking about the tree sustainability earlier on. Yes. I think in the article in the issue we talk about tree sustainability. There were many different issues, but we chose this, and it was one of the perspectives we can look into and see what we can do. That's why we came up with that topic. But indeed, it was when we just started off. The goal was not entirely clear, and we were looking where are we heading towards as a goal and how we can bring it to a conclusion. Right. I think wood is now being popularly used as the timber as a materials for building in Japan, but as a way to bring a solution is really to look into whether we could reduce CO2. I think that's a very interesting perspective to follow up till that point. I think ultimately, can we really reduce CO2 or not? That's a big thing. And then what we designed, and we trace back to where the materials came when we designed a building and architecture. I think that's a good message that we got out there. As a structural engineer, I think we got some points to reflect on as well, to think about what we can look into from the environmental protection perspective, and you soon poked on that point. Yes, I think we have to think about ourselves, and I want to make different suggestions, and also working with people from outside Japan. I see even engineers, no matter what genres they are in, they are very keen on contributing to sustainability. So that was a big stimulation to me, and we started to think about it as well. So, right, is what Tokumitsu-san talked about, whether long span is really good or not. Is long span structure sustainability contributing? I think that's very interesting So that's also part of the flow, right? Yes, for me, I have been one person that's working very hard on long span. Yes, I think it's something that you can only talk about with that effort, right? With using the space wisely, and also had some thoughts on it. But indeed, looking at also many examples of architectures outside Japan, and even talk to colleagues in UK, they're saying that they can look at a long span structure in their office. So indeed, that's some paradigm shift that we're trying to bring about. So not to just stick with the old thoughts, old school thoughts, but we refresh our uh, thought process as well, right? Yes, so as part of this series, we're talking about facilities. If we can improve the equipment and upgrade that may reduce the CO2 burden. But on the other hand, would it add any burden? That's also some things to think about. And also, when we look into specifications, what is the time duration that we should look into how to assess it? I think what would be easier to understand, and from which perspective should we look at it? I think that's also very interesting, and things that we can consider when building something new. So I think from Arab's thought, I know you start with thinking about whether you really need that piece of architecture or not to start with. So maybe one school of thought would be, maybe it is extreme, but wouldn't it be the best to the environment if you don't build it? I think that might be part of the insight, but when thinking about the architecture and thinking about possibilities of the future for architecture, when we talk about this subheader that we had about the possibilities of architecture, I would like to understand from you, Matsumoto-san, your thoughts on this. Well, I think when we're talking about architecture and nature as a big topic, but as a possibility of architectural cities, well, it's important to face environmental issues and see how we deal with it. For me, I am a facade person, so facade is really the party that needs to be straightly in place facing environmental issues. That's why we started combating those issues early. But it doesn't mean we can use only one single type of material to build the structures. So for people in the manufacturers and also for the structural designers, it's not just about only choosing steel against concrete or which is better. If I don't think it's better not to think that we can find an answer just in that simple confirmation with the materials. No matter how strong the materials we've been using, then we try to use it in a sustainable manner. And as we were talking about wood, I think we need to look into how to keep the diversity that's important for the city, for the society, and for the world, is to make sure it's a well-balanced society and build a world like that. Japanese people love to put things classified into black and white clearly, but it's also important to see how diversity can play a part in this, and we can expand this idea to a wide population. Thank you. Suga-san, how about the possibilities of architecture? I think you've already been part of it, but what do you think about it? Well, I think that nothing is, well, we build nothing. That's the very first sentence in our theme. But I think it's not about not to build anything, but it's about before you build anything, think about deeply what it is for. Talking to developers and builders, then we may discuss, whether you really need this, but ultimately we will respect their decision and take it and build it. So from this perspective of possibility of architecture, I think in this particular series, I still feel there are a lot of open opportunities we have, and we can really build many more new things. So I feel the possibility. with the existence of environmental issues, we're looking into actually another step of evolution for architecture and also the human society. So I think this is really an exciting age full of opportunities as we can think about the next steps in the future world. Yes, I feel there's a lot of possibilities. And how about Tokumitsu-san? Right. Well, I feel like the future of architecture, whether it's bright or dark, there are many discussions about it. So it doesn't mean I have an answer right here now, but I think we need to make it bright, make our future bright, not about expecting whether that's going to be a bright thing or not. It's about where we want to head to. So what we can do. That's in the very first article we had in this series about sustainability. It seems to be a very big word, but we need to also start from what we can do and find the things we can do. I think that was a theme we had in the first one. And then from there, we're looking at how young people are now working very hard on trying to bring solution and, for example, embodied carbon. As engineers, basically, they like calculation, they like math, or they don't dislike it. So make good use of that calculation and see how we can contribute to sustainability. I think that's one possibility, and also as a tool. Well, it's just a tool anyway. So we're looking at how circular economy and how we can nicely build that into part of the sustainability scheme, and by using different materials and calculating, see if it works as an embodied carbon. And from engineering's perspective, we can try to do things in different regimes that we haven't tried before. Seems that there are many positive possibilities, so I think we can take it from there and think about more possibilities. Okay, thank you. So actually, even when in the printed version of Shinkenchiku, Tanetsuyoshi-san, every time he's making that comment, and I feel that it's really enjoying it. And there's a lot of people feedback resonating with it. On the other hand, for the younger people that look into and who are writing this up, maybe do they feel they shouldn't have opted for this? And is there any reactions or changes among these younger writers? Did they say anything? Well, the story itself, I think it seems that everyone is enjoying how to build the story. It seems that everyone is discussing excitedly. Yes, exactly as Matsumoto-san mentioned earlier on, and it is on the extension of learning, and also we know what's the direction of thinking of how to think. So that is a struggle, but it is really true that sustainability is something that you need to think about and be able to talk about it. So every time when you finish one article from the series, we can feel this person can talk about it well versed. I don't know how they feel themselves, but how about Tokubuchi-san? Do you discuss with these young writers privately? Personally, I see this also helps the senior and young generations communication. It seems becoming a catalyst for our communication to talk about those serious topics. Even the young writers, they become the leader and ask us to review it once they finish the draft at a timing. So, and they also speak up clearly their opinion, their voice. I think that's really the effort that we're seeing in younger people. Maybe just that moment, but they are really positively handling this. And it seems that they also declare what they're doing very nicely. So I think that also has a meaning in itself, having this activity. Well, for me and Tokubuchi, we try to summarize, bring conclusions to their idea. But for people in our same age and a senior in the company, and try to open up our ears and listen to young people, what they're saying. And maybe we allow them to speak up, but it's not just to take in whatever they say. It's also important to think about what a point of understanding of what the young people are thinking, what we're going to do. And it's important to also see what kind of attitude we take in thinking about environmental issues. And it's really interesting that you can speak it out in your voice, yeah, and think about the next steps. Well, there are different struggles, of course, and it's every month, so next articles comes up one after the other. Maybe you're not done with the previous topic yet and you have to do the theme for next month, but yeah, it's coming one after another. Okay, so now we're done with 6 and we're going to still continue on. Moving forward, based on our experience so far, is there something you want to do in the future? Or is there some expectations you have? I would like you to talk about those. First of all, Matsunobu-san, to you. Right, as I just talked about earlier, I think this kind of articles is really for people who are reading this. They may have expectation on being able to look for some solutions in our article, especially when we talk about sustainability and our carbon neutral. People are still not having sufficient level of knowledge. That's why people try to come across and find some information, find some knowledge out of our articles. We want them to actually, after reading our articles, to look back to their own environment, their own projects, and not just to be biased on any one single thing, but to treasure the importance of diversity, as I just talked about. And that's why we have built the articles, and I feel it will be meaningful that way, right? Yeah, if it can become a trigger for people to extend their thoughts, right? I see. Suga-san, how about you? Yeah, I think when we're coming to the later half of this series, we would like to talk about not just directly working on sustainability, but also expanding to the peripherals. And that's, again, it's difficult for us to think about what are the messages we would convey, but in this series, I think is in a very narrow industry that is just for professionals in architecture and design. But with our articles in Shinkenchiku, I'm hoping people in the wider industry can read it and we can get more thoughts from the wide public, and we can lead the extended discussion from there. Right. Once we expand it up, then may be difficult to choose ways of picking examples, right? Because there is no precedent examples yet, and then we can see there are more opportunities looking into the future, right? Tokumitsu-san, how about you? Right, I think about maybe it's better not to talk about themes we have for the new series yet, but one of the themes is about the new functions we hold in the job. I think I'm also experiencing it myself recently, and I'm thinking about it. Within Arab Tokyo, we have sustainability consultant as setting this up as a new job function. We're preparing for that. And personally, I feel circular economy, I'm very much interested in that idea. So circular economy and how we can do it with developer companies, and for people interested in that, when we discuss with the client, we can really make a proposal about, and not to say I don't understand structure. Some people feel like so, but we can say, let's work together, learn together about circular economy that brings new communication with the client as well. So when you just position yourself as a structural engineer, I think we are kind of expanding that as well, with the very much of limitation to what we can do if we just say we're a structural leader. But I think it will be good with that we bring up the topic of sustainability and explore different sides of our job nature or our job function. So I think we need to turn that into an article, so I will start struggling about that. But yes, Tokuchi-san, so yourself, your work is turning into that, like consulting side, that you ever thought about it? Well, I've been really working as a hardcore engineer. That's been my thought, but Well, there are many different things. Like as I started talking about this global network of Arab, I continue to get stimulation from elsewhere around the world, and that made me think about a lot of things I didn't really think about. I would be here speaking about this topic here. Well, thinking about the environment, it doesn't mean we are only finding one solution, but there could be other possibilities and opportunities hidden there. Well, it doesn't mean that we should force ourselves to do something that we don't want to do. And we can think about it from really the perspective of what kind of architectural work we want to build and also how it would be and how it could contribute. I think it's really important to think about environmental issue because it has this two sides of the game, right? Right. So we will continue with our series. So hope for all of your attention to that. Thank you very much.